What's going on, guys? We are back and we have actually two brand new Cappy Army videos. We're going to start out with this one. Next video is going to be the one he just released today. He released this one yesterday. Dude is just pumping out the content, but this says he's talking about, you know what? Let me read the title. That makes a little more sense than just winging it. America's new Bradley sends Putin's tanks scrambling. So Bradley is the infantry fighting vehicle that has proven to be a wonder machine out here in Ukraine. Extremely versatile and dynamic, operating different kinds of terrain and combat environments, whether it be vehicle on vehicle or more urban style, or just acting as an assault asset with an infantry unit. It does so much cool stuff. So this is cool. There's a brand new Bradley type thing. So we're gonna watch it. Hey, do me a favor, please like, share, subscribe. Jump in the Discord if you're not already. Oh, the shirts. We got the new shirts. What? Flamingos over Moscow, dude. You guys are loving this stuff. Last night I got a couple different photos from you guys wearing the shirt out to dinner with your wife, dude. You have no idea how happy that makes my heart seeing that. I'm tearing up right now, dude. I'm so gay, bro. All right, let's go.
Is replacing the Army's dusty ancient U.S. Army's new XM-30 mechanized infantry fighting vehicle is replacing the Army's dusty ancient 1980s-era M2 Bradley in the role of transporting a squad of average infantrymen to the front line, who are all fueled by ripets and hate. In a way, the XM-30 is already getting a combat dress rehearsal, because the Lynx IFV entered Ukrainian service in early 2026 for the first time after years of evaluation. So the XM-30 shares many of the same design ideas, and they're using it as a kind of way to stealth test the vehicle in Ukraine under real combat conditions. The lessons learned fighting Russian armor will directly influence the final XM-30 American design. The Army just released the first ever images of the new prototypes, and the 3D blueprints reveal a lot of shocking, never before seen aspects of the vehicle. It outlines a major shift toward being heavily focused on anti-armor weapons. It's way more mobile and designed to fend off against pesky enemy attack drones that we all hate. Is it okay to be racist against drones here?
What we know is that
Yes.
what has worked for the last 30 and 40 years of fighting
is just no longer sufficient.
The XM-30 is equipped with an almost comically large 50mm autocannon that's basically just a couple of millimeters away from being a tank cannon, and a mysterious new multi-mission missile launcher that are designed to pop the top off Russian armor.
lean, lethal fighting machine.
But is this 45 billion?
That strikes me as some kind of a javelin, or not a javelin, maybe almost like a tomahawk style. Shoots up in the sky, finds its target, rains hate right down on it. If that's what I feel like that side launcher does.
$1 program
No idea.
really the right answer? What are its strengths and weaknesses? I'm your average mechanized infantryman, Chris Cappy. Let's find out.
Let's
the
go,
platoon
Cap.
of American XM-30 infantry fighting vehicles rolls toward a village in far eastern Europe that they've been tasked with recapturing.
A wet dream of an assignment for any infantry officer.
Intelligence reports that a Russian tank platoon is operating in the area. The vehicle begins scanning for enemies. The first thing that jumped out to me when I was looking at the Army's new renderings is that the vehicle has all these new multiple communication antennas and electronic warfare dongles attached to the roof. The turret is just lousy with wires and antennas for GPS, SATCOM, radar detectors, laser warning receivers. The XM-30 is like a massive sensor with a gun slapped onto it. Our XM-30 crew launches a Coyote 3 loitering munition from its new multi-mission launcher to find the enemy positions. The Coyote flies for
I said tomahawk, but I meant more like a hellfire, and that's kind of what this coyote looks like.
2 hours overhead over the battlefield, searching for any lurking enemy tanks within about a 60-kilometer radius. The video feed is then sent straight back to the vehicle, where new AI targeting software automatically searches for signs of enemy vehicles.
As a former mechanized infantryman, I can confirm this would have been awesome to have, so that you're not essentially blind to your surroundings in the whole of a vehicle.
The software spots a T-90 that's hidden in a tree line about 3 kilometers away. It would have been impossible to see it on the screen with just the naked eye, but the computer is able to see it and spot it. Once the XM30 detects the enemy tank, the crew zeroes in on it using its new next-generation FLIR thermal imager that's attached to the turret. That has twice as effective range as the Bradley, so the commander is able to identify any enemy vehicles at 20 kilometers distance with this new thermal imager.
This all already sounds like I'm going to need to pass the bar or something to operate one of these. No way would I get away with an ASVAB waiver today.
The AI system in the vehicle takes data from the drone feed and then combines it with data from the turret thermal camera to create this kind of fused picture of the battlefield. And this way you don't mistakenly shoot at a cow thinking that it's a BMP.
But I will say, infantry love having access to more computing power, so long as it's kept simple enough that like 4 buttons you can operate it with.
The commander prepares to open fire with their main gun. Look at the XM913 chain gun, its primary weapon. It's equipped with a 50mm cannon on an unmanned remote turret. Even though it fires a much larger shell, the cannon barrel itself is only about 117 inches, only a few inches bigger than the old Bradley 25mm cannon. The fire control computer has already calculated the range, target speed, wind, and lead angle.
We saw this assault right here. Just a little context. There's a whole Russian column coming through here. And this Ukrainian tank that's tucked up behind this house right here was able to eliminate like 4 or something. It was crazy.
Before the gunner even squeezes the trigger, essentially taking all the fun out of killing.
The autocannon hits with 24,000 pounds of recoil.
It weighs 480 pounds total, and you feel it down in your plums when this thing fires, I'm sure, because the 50mm Bushmaster cannon erupts, throwing a stream of armor-piercing rounds downrange at well over a kilometer per second. 200 rounds per minute slam around the enemy tank. The 50 Mike fires shells that are significantly larger than the M2 Bradley's old 25 Mike, and that was a real thumper. It fires the 50 by 228mm advanced ammunition. But is it good enough to knock out the enemy Russian armor? The 50mm shell contains around 8 times the volume inside compared to a 25mm. It's confusing, but that's how math works, I'm told. This gives it much more chamber pressure, and Barney style, what that means is chamber pressure is equal to velocity, which is equal to the Army's favorite buzzword, lethality. It makes it more killing worth. It gives more space for a penetrator to go in there, more mass for explosive payload, and new fusing options, as we'll see in a second. But larger ammunition also has several downsides that we need to address here. It's not all cookies and rainbow cake. It means far less capacity, which every infantryman hates. The Bradley, for instance, has 300 rounds ready to rock loaded inside the gun, an additional 600 rounds at least of ammo stored inside the vehicle.
Wait a second, I don't like having less ammunition. I hope the engineers down in the lab come up with some kind of miracle solution to add more ammo capacity to the XM30. We need to add like a bleacher of ammo racks on this thing, and for $45 billion, I think we can figure it out.
It's not publicly available how many rounds the XM30 will be able to rock with straight out of the gun, but estimates are maybe 200 rounds in the gun and 300 in storage. However, the new designs, those blueprints that were just released, suggest that there's extra space in the turret and around the hull for ammunition storage, which could mean that that number is higher, and I'm lowballing it. This would be placing a huge burden on logistics to move that far heavier round around the battlefield, to have to resupply positions more quickly if they keep running out of ammo. But suppressing fire, when it comes to keeping the enemy's head down, you need volume of fire. It requires wasting thousands of rounds just to keep the enemy pinned down. Feels like I'm taking crazy pills here. The 6.8mm engine.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Cappy is the mech infantry guy. He would know better than me, but what I would imagine they would try to do is pair some of the older Bradleys for that purpose, suppression, keeping heads down, and then having these new Bradleys for more anti-armor, anti-structure combat.
GSW program.
But if they work in tandem, right? You got like 3 or 2 of the old Bradleys and 2 of the new Bradleys or something. You know, you could kind of divide and conquer different parts of the mission.
Program debate all over
Targets.
again, but with armored vehicles. So how does the Army plan to get around this problem? In order to make up for the smaller ammo capacity, the 50mm cannon can hit point targets at between 3,000 to 4,000 meters, roughly twice the distance as the old Bradley. In order to make up for that lower ammo count, it has velocity sensing, which gives you the option of firing rates, so you can choose how fast you kill the enemy, how much you want to spray hate downrange from 100 to 200 rounds per minute to help conserve ammo like every green infantryman does. The fire control system computer fuses all of that sensor feed and information from the drone surveillance into this single picture for the battlefield that the platoon shared. It's like being part of a weird hive mind collective animal or a Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. You get to see and sense everyone else and what they're seeing. This information from this sensor is fused with the information from the thermal imager that's combined with data using Grok. No, literally, the military used Grok to destroy 2,000 targets in the war in Iran. This is just the hell that we live in now. Our crew's 50mm shells slam into the frontal arc of the enemy Russian T-90 tank. What is the first thing that happens? We know the old Bradley can punch through about 95mm of RHAE steel. This is the XM1203. It's the Army's most powerful armor-piercing autocannon shell to date, part of the 50mm autocannon family. It fires a discarding sabot, much bigger penetrating
What is the Warthog fire? Doesn't the Warthog fire a 50 mil? Or am I tripping?
rod in it compared to the Bradley's AP ammo. The new shot is estimated to punch through roughly 120 to 160 millimeters of RHAE steel. Depending if you measure from the base or the grundle, it still wouldn't likely be enough to penetrate a enemy main battle tank front armor though. But this punch would be higher with future depleted uranium or tungsten darts.
What's that? The uranium shells are going to give me cancer someday? Well, joke's on you. At least it won't be service connected.
This is why accuracy and range matter so much, because the XM30 then opens up with additional shots that are placed to rip apart the Russian T-90 sensors. It strips off explosive reactive armor and smashes its tracks. This causes a mobility kill at further distances compared to its predecessor. Then the XM30 driver spots an enemy anti-tank guided missile team preparing to fire at them from inside a trench about 600 meters away. Here is how the crew handles this tactical problem. The way the XM30's new ammo works is that it fires from a dual feed system, meaning the gun has two ammunition belts loaded simultaneously, like something out of the Matrix Revolutions. The gunner can instantly switch between these different types of ammo on the fly with the push of a button. But with the XM30, there's a new trick up the sleeve. The high explosive round is actually several rounds in one. The XM1204 has a programmable multi-mode fuse. That's the type of bullet. The same projectile can be programmed to function as a point detonator, which explodes immediately on impact, and a point detonation delay, which penetrates a wall before then exploding inside of a room, or airburst, my personal favorite. They use the laser rangefinder to designate the enemy trench at a distance of 622 meters away. They fire off a rip of rounds at the trench, and the shells explode right over the heads of the enemy, sending shrapnel raining down on them. So the XM30's
Dude, an absolute trench destroyer. Wow.
one high explosive shell behaves like 3 different types of ammunition, all depending on how the gunner has the fire control computer program the round as it leaves the barrel. And there's room for future new designs. They're working on ones that guide itself in the air with little minor trajectory, that they're working on fins or possibly rockets to move the bullet while it's in midair so that it could hit moving targets or hit over hilltops. Crazy stuff that they're working on in future of 50mm cannons. So the M2 Bradley did not have this ability and couldn't, partly because the 25 mic round is too small to be ideal for the size of the fuse that you need for the airburst. The airburst rounds can also be used against drones, and that's one of the things they're testing it on. The American XM30 can move quickly at 70 kilometers per hour, so it makes it easier to flank enemy armor. It also has more mobility. If you look at those designs, those blueprints that we were looking at earlier, it shows more room between some of the road wheels, which makes it easier for you to go off-roading and attack the enemy from unpredictable positions. So the platoon flanks the enemy T-90 platoon, and they start opening fire from the side, slamming AP shells into the side of the Russian tanks. Based on open source estimates, it's unlikely that the 50mm rounds would reliably penetrate a enemy tank's armor from the side. One of the most important factors will be what angle the round's impacting at, because a sloped angle of armor can significantly reduce the effectiveness of incoming shells. Look at this photo. The same shot coming at a 90-degree angle has to go through about 100mm of...
Wow, that's cool.
steel, while at 40 degrees, it's closer to twice the amount of steel that it has to cut through. But assuming that the side hull is between 150 and 250 millimeters equivalent of armor, it would not be easy to cut through with an autocannon. However, the enemy tank's tracks and gears are extremely vulnerable to being disabled by autocannon fire. And keep in mind that by the book, the US Army really strongly implies that you should not use the XM30 or infantry fighting vehicles to go after enemy tanks.
Reloading the multi-mission launcher, however, is a big question mark that I would like answered. My hope is that they figure out a way to reload the missile launcher from under armor with some kind of auto missile reloader, so you don't have to draw straws on who's going to climb on top of the roof outside the armor while under fire. The 50mm cannon is really meant to compete with new versions of the BMP-3 that have more armor. So the new 50mm is capable of punching through these new enemy infantry fighting vehicles without having to expend its valuable limited supply of missile effectors, as we'll see in a minute. Surprisingly, the XM30 will not have the same anti-tank weapons as the Bradley, with the Bradley's old tow launcher, which sometimes can break down and can go into disrepair. The new IFV is going to have the multi-mission launcher, also known as the breakfast sampler at IHOP or the tour of Italy at Olive Garden. It gives you a chance to fire and taste just a little bit of everything. This sounds truly wild when you get to hear about what it does. The multi-mission launcher will be able to fire 3 different types of missiles from one launcher. It can fire a tow missile, a javelin missile, or a Coyote Block 3 loitering munition. The Army calls these effectors or effects, which is a fun euphemism for long-range killing munitions. The effectors effectively kill enemy main battle tanks, fires the FGM-148 Javelin as its primary tank killer, but the new Javelin that the US Army has now has an extended range of 4.5 kilometers or about 2.8 miles, about twice as far as the Block 1 missiles that you might be familiar with. I've now lived long enough to go through an entire generation of weapons technology. I feel seasoned. When the crew fires that Javelin, though, against the T-90, the Javelin top attack mode hits with a tandem heat warhead that defeats Russian ERA armor and thin roof armor. This causes the T-90 tank's top to explode in a giant fireball. So really, the 50mm autocannon was able to buy time and degrade the enemy tank's defenses, which created the conditions for a killing blow.
Unlike the development of the Bradley, that was largely done behind closed doors in smoky rooms alongside the Illuminati, the XM30 is being developed more transparent with the help of your average infantryman.
Jim Toots spent 26 years as an infantry officer in the US Army, so you know he's pretty f***ing based. And now he's working on the multi-mission launcher. And he said that you can now mix and match. You can have the quiver of capability in the back of your vehicle to load the appropriate effectors that you need given for your mission. The only way that it's able to do this is because of new software designs. Because the Bradley, to use a different effector, you'd have to tear the launcher completely apart and rebuild it from scratch. The Army mentions how its systems are connected with this new modular open systems approach, and this allows the XM30 to use the Army's favorite buzzword, as well as to let it be upgraded on the same frame. The 6th Infantry in the back of the vehicle are also armed with Javelin missiles and Carl Gustaf recoilless rifles capable of engaging enemy armor. But what happens when rounds impact on the XM30's chassis itself? The hull was designed using computer systems and additive printing methods that were not possible during the design and production of the Bradley in the 1970s and 80s. Today, engineers can now simulate exactly how a blast wave travels through the hull or where stress concentrates during an impact before a single piece of steel is ever cut. One interesting thing about the XM30's armor that I found online is through digging through the website Frag Out. They noted that the American Rheinmetall selected Integris composites as its armor partner for the XM30 bid, which tells us a lot, allows us to infer a lot about its armor, because Integris specializes in ceramic composite armor systems rather than conventional steel. That strongly suggests that the Rheinmetall entry uses advanced modular composite armor, but less obvious than that is what David Cordova, the CCO of Integris, said. They apparently have a whole database of blast solutions on their computers. They use advanced 3D modeling and computer simulation of ballistic impacts. This allows them to develop armor solutions faster than the old traditional methods. They've run thousands of tests shooting the hell out of armor to optimize and min-max that armor, which sounds like a pretty sweet job. Integris already does the armor on the CV-90 combat vehicle and a whole bunch of other projects, but what's interesting is that they work on a lot of naval warships and aircraft armor, which hints at their ability to produce really lightweight armor. Companies like Integris talk about optimizing thousands of material combinations rather than trying to invent a single miracle material. So it's made out of boron carbide, silicon carbide, and alumina to create lightweight ballistic protection. The biggest difference though is the Army is no longer relying on armor alone to keep the crew alive. The Bradley was built around a welded aluminum hull with steel applique armor that was bolted on over the decades. The XM30 is expected to use a stronger steel hull that's combined with these modular composite packages of armor. One layer shatters an incoming penetrator, another absorbs the remaining energy, while another catches the deadly metal fragments that are called spall that would otherwise ricochet around the crew compartment like a giant shotgun blast. And you could see from the Army's released designs that they put out of the CAD file of the 3D image of the profile of the vehicle that has a lot more frontal space left over to protect the crew hull compartment. The two crewmen also no longer sit inside.
It was crazy to me you can get a full blueprint of the latest and greatest infantry fighting vehicle, but you can't get the unredacted Epstein files. Just a side note.
The turret that is surrounded by ammo. Instead, they're moved deep inside a protected armor crew, a specialized cell. Even if the turret takes a catastrophic hit, there's a much better chance of the crew surviving. Meanwhile, a dead crew is irreplaceable, and I don't mean that in a Hallmark card sort of way. I mean it in a cold, hard truth that literally that's years and years of experience and tons of training that went into learning how to operate this clearly very sophisticated system and all of its technologies and camera systems on it. You can't easily replace that or fix that because no vehicle is invincible. All are vulnerable to destruction, and many M2 Bradleys were destroyed in Ukraine. The XM30 has a higher chance of survivability thanks to its increased power generation. This supports the active protection systems that shoot tanks and anti-tank guided missiles out of the air mid-air. This has a history of working well, but their downside is they haven't fully figured out how to stop incoming drones with them yet. The XM30 is being designed with modular armor packages. That means that the Army can bolt on or remove armor depending on the mission. In Europe, you can go with the Fat Boy version that's 55 tons and then slim down for the Pacific one where you need to roll light. The downside to all these sensors is sensor overload. You can get overwhelmed with too much information to know what to do with any of it, and it's something I'm the most skeptical about with the new vehicle. The Russian T-90M tank platoon is also sending out reconnaissance drones to hover around and find the American XM30, and this is where the vehicle's new stealth capabilities try to hide it. They give it a new Allison's E-Gen Force transmission, which gives it electric hybrid propulsion. That means that it drives more silently and gives way less heat off. The XM30 basically has its own incognito mode. But the XM30 vehicle is by no means a stealth aircraft. It's vulnerable to detection. The other way the T-90 searches for them is by looking for their electromagnetic signature, because modern vehicles emit radio wave signals every time you crack a joke about your commander's height. This gives your position away, but the Army has new ways of reducing that detection. How it does this is highly classified, but the Army repeatedly mentions signature management as a key part of the new vehicle, and it's a clear hint at their efforts to reduce audible and visual markers. For decades, conventional design philosophy was that whoever built the strongest armored vehicle would win in a battle, but now the new XM30 suggests that the winner will be the smarter one. To learn more, check out this video on the Army's missile tank or this playlist here on military.
Love it. Please check out Cappy's channel, you guys. Love his content. A couple things and then we'll wrap it up. I think this is from a purely man testosterone. Why is it so dark in here, dudes? From a purely, like I said, just a awesome perspective, this is awesome. It really is. I think the US military has a way of over-engineering almost everything that they touch, and it is so cool. There's a reason the United States military is the most advanced and the most efficient and the most well-built out of any military in the world. But that said, the first thing I always think about is I don't see anything that this thing has on it that's going to stop one of, for example, Russia's elite drone team Rubicon and their fiber optic FPVs. So this multi-million-dollar awesome combat machine would just get absolutely obliterated by a couple of $800 drones. So, but still, it's still very cool. It doesn't mean it's any less cool, really. It just means it's, in my opinion, it's not a viable option on the battlefield yet in today's modern theaters. Anyways, super cool. Check out Cappy's stuff. Please like, share, subscribe on this video. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next one.